So today, here's what we're doing. We are diving into a brand new sermon series today called Jesus Is. Now, Jesus is blank is technically the name of the series. And the reason we're diving into the series, the reason we're talking about this is honestly, it's twofold. There's two main reasons that we're talking about this. First of all, Jesus is kind of a big deal to us, right? We're a church. And so if Jesus isn't a big deal, we have a big problem. So Jesus is a big deal to us. Our mission statement as a church is we cultivate flourishing lives through Jesus Christ. Now, I just ended a whole sermon series on what does it look like to have a flourishing life, and I figured, so maybe the second sermon series, we should talk about what does it look like to just say the word Jesus? Like, what does that actually mean? Because we ultimately can't get to the flourishing without the Jesus. That's what we believe in this church. It's who we are. Everything flows in and through this reality of who he is. So it matters a big deal to us. But then also, I think one of the reasons I'm wanting to talk about this, Jesus is blank, is because I think that there's probably not a more fundamental, challenging question that the way you define this changes your very existence on so many different levels. I think this is probably one of the biggest questions out there. I know the world wants to say, like, what is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? What is all this? But I believe that if you can answer this question right, a lot of the other questions will honestly follow through out of it. Like, Jesus is, our answer to this question will change the way that we see so many different things. And so the question is, how do you answer this question? When you say Jesus is blank, what would you do? Like, and I mean, here, I think honestly, for me, it probably would change based upon the day. Like maybe today I'm feeling Jesus is, strength, Jesus is joy, Jesus is hope. Maybe yesterday I was feeling like Jesus is the guy that gets me out of the bed in the morning, right? I mean, I don't know, like there's different places where Jesus is different things. But I think if we ask like this question, what do you think people around us would say? Like what would others say? I know that there are some who honestly say that Jesus was just a man. They can be very literal about it. Jesus was a guy that lived 2,000 years ago. Some people even say Jesus is fictional. He didn't live. They're wrong, by the way, but there are people who say that. There's people who actually say Jesus is this, Jesus is that. I actually heard one person say, I think that Jesus is an alien, which I mean, that's an interesting, I mean, it's like one of those conversations where are you high right now? Or what's going on? But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Jesus says he comes from heaven, right? Heaven is otherworldly. Therefore, in the technical definition of the world, Jesus could be defined as an alien, right? I mean, we can go that way if you want to. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. But that's not how I traditionally look at it. And yet, who is Jesus? It's a big question. Is Jesus dead? Is Jesus alive? Is Jesus relevant? Is Jesus irrelevant? Is Jesus political? Is Jesus not political? Is Jesus what he says he is, or is he a fraud? And again, so many of us, we are going to approach this question from different perspectives. And yet I believe with everything in me that when we get the answer to this question right, it's going to change the way we see things. It's going to change the way that we approach life. It's going to change the way that we approach our families, our hope, our friends. It's going to change really the way that we look at absolutely everything in life. So here's my goal for the day. My prayer, my desire for today is that every single one of us will have a DTR moment with Jesus today of some flavor or another. Now, if you don't know what DTR means, I wrote it out, and it's a define the relationship moment with Jesus. That is literally the purpose of this entire sermon series that we'll be talking about really from now until Easter. Who is Jesus? And what I want us to do is take this define the relationship moment. Now, what is a define the relationship moment? Let me break it down and kind of say, I don't know if you've ever had a relationship, but there comes a time in a relationship where you have to say, this is who we were, and this is who we're now going to be, right? Like Janae and I, we grew up in Bucharest, Romania. We went to high school together in Bucharest. And so it was this international school, and we had our friends group, which was there was 4 key friends that we hung out all the time. Janae and I were best friends, but we had 2 other friends. There was this Korean girl, this Indonesian guy, and all of us are living in a foreign country together, and we're all aliens, if you will. And so we all just hung out a lot, and we enjoyed hanging out a lot. And it was great. Until one fateful day where Janae and I, we attended the same church, and so we went on this train ride. It's Europe. You go on train rides. That's a thing there. That's just natural. And so we were, we were going on a youth group, basically a youth convention trip is what we were doing. But instead of renting a bus like American churches do in Europe, you rent the train, right? You get on the train and you go. So we get on the train. The train, we have to get there at 12 o'clock at night, something stupid like that. That's just when you get on the train, right? You don't pick. And then so we're riding the train. It was fun the first few hours. We're just having fun, being teenagers, doing all that. But then about like 1, 2 o'clock, right? We start getting sleepy. This is what happens. So everybody like sits down in their chairs and calms down. So we're sitting down in our chairs, and this moment happened where my best friend is sitting next to me, and she puts her head on my shoulders. And that's not a big deal, right? It's not. But to me, it was a huge deal because my best friend just put her head on my shoulders and she touched me, right? And when she touched me, something like switched in my mind and I was like, you know what? I think I like this. I think I like that. What if she wasn't just a friend? What if maybe we held hands? What if maybe we took this relationship to another level? And so something switched in me, and really nothing has been the same ever since. I still get excited when she puts her head on my shoulders. Right? I still get excited when we're together. I'm still passionately excited to be with Janae. So this happened. We've been dating for a really long time, I just want to say, because that happened in high school. But we're still together. Everything changed in that moment. And we went home from this convention, and we started like dating. That's what we started doing. She was really young, like ridiculously young. So I was nervous to ask her dad, what are you going to do if I like this? And yet I did because that's what I needed. At 14, she's not super young. But she was 15, I guess, she says. But right on the verge there. Anyway, so the moral of the story is we started dating, and everything changed. My relationship with the other 2 friends that we would hang out with all the time, I don't know if you've ever been there, right? But who wants to go hang out with the new couple that's just being a couple and being a new couple? The relationships kind of broke apart. Everything that I did before, it had to shift because everything had changed. I used to spend the majority of my time playing video games because that's what I did as a teenage boy, right? And then to this day, I have still not beaten Banjo-Kazooie 3 that I was playing when I started dating Janae. She took that game is off the map, and I've never gone back. I have beaten other video games. I'm not a lost cause, if that's where you're at. I have gone back to video, but I've never went back to that one because she changed my world. She did. Because I had to define the relationship moment. Now the question is, when it comes to Jesus, have we had to define the relationship moment? And even if we had to define the relationship moment, let me just simply tell you, there's been more than once where I've had to sit down with Janae and have a heart-to-heart, right? There's been more than once where I've had to sit down and say, okay, here's where I'm at, here's where you're at. What does our relationship look like now? Because we're no longer on a train in Europe. Now we've got these 4 kids that we're trying to corral, right? And some of them are bigger than me and could probably corral me if they wanted, right? And so, what does it look like now to have this relationship? We have to consistently have these define the relationship moments. And so what we're hoping to do is let's come back to who is Jesus. Let's come back to what is Jesus, why is Jesus, where is Jesus, when is Jesus, all of these, right? Let's define who he is and what it looks like to follow him. And the reason we're doing this is because, well, first of all, it's something that I think is critically important for all of us to do. No matter where you're at in life, if you're in a new stage of life, if you're in a new place in life, if you're just experiencing life different than you did last year for whatever reason, we all have to come back to this consistently and say, how am I now? And the reason I believe this is because it's something that Jesus actually did. See, Jesus had been, what we're going to do is we're going to turn to the book of Luke in just a little bit, but there's a story, and it's actually found in all 3 of the Gospels, all 3 of the main Gospels, and then John has a very similar story, which we'll talk about there as well a little bit today, but there's a story where Jesus confronts his disciple and his guys, okay, everybody says this, but who do you say? And so let's read this together. Luke chapter 9 is where we're turning. One day, Jesus had left the crowds to pray alone. Now, I want to give you context. It says Jesus had left the crowds to pray alone, not play alone, pray alone. There's a major difference. But he's leaving the crowd. See, what had just happened right before this in Luke, if you've got your Bible and you're reading through it, you can probably see right before this was the feeding of the 5,000. Now, what the feeding of the 5,000 is it's this moment where Jesus is giving this incredible sermon, and it gets late at night, and he's going and going and going, and everybody gets hungry, and so he's like, we got to feed these people. So he takes some bread and some fish, and it's basically he takes a Lunchable, if you will, and he feeds 5,000 people with one Lunchable. I can't feed myself with one Lunchable, but Jesus feeds 5,000 people with one Lunchable. He takes the fish, he takes the bread, he breaks it apart, and it's their minds are blown, right? Is Jesus a miracle worker? Is Jesus a magician? Is Jesus an alien? Like, what is going on is the question that's running through all of their minds. And so he just left these crowds to pray alone is the context that we need to understand. That's what they're just coming through. And on their way, like down from these crowds and everything, maybe he's just doing an aside at this point. He looks at his disciples and he says, guys, who do all these people think that I am? Who do you say I am? In essence, he's asking, Jesus is blank, right? He's saying, who do you say that I am? And then they look around and they answer the question. They say, well, some people say that you're John the Baptist, right? Some people believe that you are Elijah, is what they say. Others say that you're just one of the ancient prophets brought back from the dead. They don't believe in reincarnation, but whatever. It's like, that's kind of where they're at. This is just, you're something incredible. That's what everybody is talking about. This is what they believed. This is what they are asking. And here's the thing. The reason they were able to answer this question, like, what are the other people thinking, is because it's something that everybody was talking about. Like, if I asked you right now, what is your opinion on Bad Bunny? You have one. Whether it's positive or negative, you know he did the Super Bowl most likely. And if you don't, he did the Super Bowl halftime show, let me tell you. And we have an opinion, like, it was good, it was bad. Like, we talk about it because it's something popular that's on the news, right? Like, I could ask you, what do you think of the war in Iran? You have an opinion on it, good or bad. You've got an opinion on the things that are happening in the world, most likely because you've heard about it. If nothing else, you have an opinion on gas prices, right? I mean, we all have our opinions on things. Jesus was the happening thing of the time. And so it's not an abnormal question. Like, what do you think about Jesus? What do people think about you? What is your opinion on Jesus? And I'm just curious. Have you ever asked your family, what do you think Jesus is? Who do you think Jesus is? Have you ever asked your neighbors? Jesus is blank. Could you finish that sentence for me? Like, are we afraid to ask this question? It wasn't a big deal to them because he was popular, but to us, I think it still is a big deal that we need to be willing to ask this question. Who is Jesus to you? And there's no judgment on the answer when you ask that, because some people are going to be stupid. They're going to say he's John the Baptist, or he's a dead man brought back to life. He is a dead man brought back to life, but that's a different story. Come back on Easter. We'll talk about that. But who is Jesus? This is the question. Now, Jesus looks at them, and he says, okay, well, this is what everybody else is saying, right? But who do you say? Who do you say that I am? And Peter, being the first to speak up, because he was normally the first to speak up, looked at Jesus and he says, okay, well, I believe you are the Messiah, the sent from God one. Now, that sounds really cool, right? And I don't know if what I'm about to do, by the way, is we're going to dive deep, because although this is not a long passage, last week I gave you like 10,000 passages. This week I'm giving you like 4 verses. But we're really going to dive into this and ask the question of, if this is who Jesus is, if this is what his disciples believed he was, what does this mean? I think it's really important. And so the question is, what did Peter just say? He said, you are the Messiah, right? The sent from God. So what does the word Messiah mean? First of all, I just want to break it down. If you actually read this verse in different places, the word Messiah specifically means both, in Hebrew, the word Messiah means anointed one. The translation for the word Messiah in the Greek language is actually the word Christ, by the way. And so when we call ourselves Christian, we are saying we are Messiahans as well. It literally means the exact same, it's the same word, just a different language. Messiah means Christ, which means, both of them mean the anointed one. This is what Peter is saying. He's saying, you are the anointed one. This is not surprising, because again, when we're very first introduced to Peter himself, like the first time we're introduced to Peter in the book of John, we see it goes down like this. Andrew was a follower of John the Baptist. Andrew being Simon Peter's brother, if you will. He was a follower of John the Baptist, and John had just said, you guys got to listen to Jesus. He's a cool dude. Listen to him, do all this. Andrew gets word about who Jesus is, and he bolts, literally. If you can turn to John chapter 1, verse 40, kindly, that would be helpful. What he says is, Andrew, Simon Peter's, was one of these men who heard what John said, and again, he bolted to find Simon Peter, a.k.a., and told him, we found the Messiah, which means Christ. In case you didn't believe my Greek translation, John's giving you the exact same one. He says, this is who he is. Now again, what does this mean? It means he's the anointed one. Now, what I also want to do real quick, if we're going to actually understand who Jesus is, we need to understand what the very term anointed one means in and of itself. So let's go. We're going to take a deep dive into like history through the Bible, biblical history right now, to truly understand what it means to be the anointed one. Well, first of all, being an anointed one was not an abnormal thing, actually, because in Israelite history, there were many, many anointed people. Anytime that there was a new king, like before the king would be become the king, they would be anointed. The prophet would come up to them, they would take a bottle of oil, and they would like just pour the bottle, see? Like that, but oil, not water. It's way different. They would pour the oil down over him, and it would flow, and he became the anointed one. It was a symbol that represented the chosen and the choosing of God's power and grace flowing down, and it was intentional. The anointing flows down upon him, and it covers his whole body because it starts from the top and goes down, and he is covered with the grace and power of God. That is what it meant to be anointed. Kings weren't the only ones that were anointed. Prophets also were anointed. Like messengers from God were anointed, and they were actually, the anointing was placed upon them. And so it was not abnormal. Almost every king in Israel was anointed at some point. This is how, it was like coronation day, right? If you remember Elsa and Anna, I got 3 girls in my house, but like, it's coronation day, let's go. They have a party, they have chocolate fountains, they have all this, and they sing, ah, na, 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 and there's like this big celebration because it's coronation day, right? It's the same thing for anointing day. You were the chosen anointed one. That's what it meant. And so again, what Peter is saying matters because although this was not abnormal to have anointed ones in Israel, something shifted in about the year 300 BC. In 300 BC, see, Israel had been invaded by Babylon in 500 BC. BC meaning before Christ. So that just kind of puts you at where we're at here. 500 years before Jesus, Babylon invades Israel. There are no more kings in Israel. Do you know what that also means? There are no more anointed ones in Israel starting in 500 BC. Also, what happens in about 300 BC, there were no more prophets either. I mean, like the prophets had all died, they'd all gone away, so there's no kings who were anointed, there's no prophets who were anointed, there are no more messiahs being sent to Israel. And so what that means is they are desperate for a messiah. Why are they desperate for a messiah? Now we're going to go a little bit further back in history. Because God had always promised that a messiah would come and change everything for Israel. See, this promise had always existed. And every Messiah who would come, whether it be King David, King Saul, King Jeroboam, King Jehoiakim, I could keep going on every king, they were supposed to live up to the promise, but they didn't live up to the promise. They were always looking for the new king, or maybe it was the prophet Samuel or the prophet, I just lost every other prophet, but there's a lot of prophets in the Bible. Just look at the books. They're all there. Every book in there, basically. I mean, he's saying, just think through all of these. And God had promised back in the beginning, because what happened, again, we're going all the way back now, in the beginning of time in the Bible, God created everything. Everything was perfect. Man screwed up everything because man is not perfect. And when I say man, I am also including women. I don't want to be sexist. We're all screwed up. That's kind of what I'm saying here. We are screwed up and we broke down everything. And God said, like to the man and the woman, he said, I will send a anointed one who will come and crush evil and destroy evil and bring redemption to you guys' brokenness. This is what he says. And then he doesn't just say it to Abraham, like throughout the thing. King David, who was an anointed one, did phenomenal things. He was the greatest king of Israelite history. And yet, when he wanted to build a temple, God said, no, dude, you've got too much blood on your hands, but I will send somebody who will reign, who will rule over everything. And to your offspring, David, there will be a child who will come, who will bring hope, and he will rule over everything. He will be Lord over all. And so this promise had come. This is now like 1500 BC, right? Let's fast forward 1,000 years. There's kings, none of them living up to the promise, none of them doing what was said. 500, Israel is invaded, right? There's no more kings. Isaiah comes on the scene, and Isaiah says basically, we are hurting right now. We are desperate right now. We are being ruled over and oppressed. We have become slaves, and we are being beaten down. And what Isaiah says is, but unto us a child will be born, And it will be born to a virgin in Bethlehem. And there's a little bit more framing to who this Messiah will be, Isaiah says. And he frames it a little bit more. And he says, there's going to become a Messiah who will come. And he says this Messiah is going to rule, and his name will be called Emmanuel, which means God with us, which pairs the king that's coming with this name Emmanuel. That means he is God himself with us. Because El means God, and Emmanuel together means God with us. And so what he's saying is this coming Messiah is going to be different. And then Isaiah has the audacity to say, we're going to call him Wonderful Counselor, Prince of Peace, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. And I'm about to break into some Christmas songs, I'm just saying. But this is what the promise was. Like there's this Messiah is coming. And when we understand the context that Israel was living in, that Peter was living in, this question becomes a way more loaded question, right? Because he's saying, who am I? And Peter's answer is not just, you're a good guy. Peter's answer is, he is at this moment having a define the relationship moment. Where Jesus is saying, how do you define me right now? And what Peter says is, you are the coming anointed one. You are the one that's coming that will change everything. You are the one that's coming that's going to turn everything upside down. This is who you are. And so here's what we're going to do is we're going to look at this passage again one more time. There are two groups of people, two ways to define the relationship with Jesus. The crowds look at Jesus, and what did they say? They say, you're John the Baptist, you're this, you're that, you're something else. You're something, but you're not that special, is kind of what they say. You're special, but you're not that much. See, here's what they said. They said what many, many people in the world say, and many of us maybe even here today have said, Jesus was good, and it would be good to follow him and do what he tells me to do. It would be good advice. See, if Jesus is a preacher like Elijah, if Jesus is a preacher like John the Baptist or one of the other prophets, it's not life-changing. And that matters. Because it's one thing to hear a good preacher. Some of you are hearing it, I hope, a good preacher right now. And some of you will go home and nothing will change, right? Because it was a good preacher and he had good advice and you're going to do it. I'm no better than Dave Ramsey or some other Joe Schmo. I don't know. That was the first self-help guy I picked, right? You pick a self-help guy. I'm no better than them if that's all I am, is a good teacher. But if what Jesus was, and if what this message is more than that, then we have to go from just Jesus being a teacher to something else. And this leads to the second group, the followers, the people who said, I'm going to hear that you're the Messiah, and I'm going to do what Peter did. I'm going to drop everything and follow you. Where was Peter when Andrew, his brother, came running up to him? Peter was fishing on a boat, right? He's fishing on a boat, doing his job, and he says, I found the Messiah. And what did Peter do? He dropped the boat. He literally closed down the family business, and he said, I'm abandoning everything I had. I'm leaving my family, my wife. I'm not telling anybody to leave their wife. I just want to be clear. That's not what I'm saying. But Peter said, I'm leaving everything behind. He didn't get a divorce. He just left everything behind and said, I'm going to follow Jesus. And I'm going to sleep in the same house he is. I'm going to smell his BO. I'm going to be close one-on-one with Jesus as much as I can because I want to learn all I can. See, the followers had a different perspective. When you truly understand the importance of who Jesus is, it changes how you encounter everything else. And that's really what we want to press into today. If we truly understand who Jesus is, it changes how we see everything else. Because see what Jesus also said in another sermon, he knew there was hurt in the world. He knew there was sin in the world. He knew there was loss in the world. He knew there's all of this. And here's what he did. In John, he says, here, listen to me, guys. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the light. If you want hope, if you want peace, if you want access to heaven, if you want to connect with the Father, I am the only way you're going to get to what it is you're looking for. So I am the way, I am the peace, I am all of this. And he's crying out to them and he's saying, follow me, come to me, do this. And so he's challenging them to come face to face with what they believe about Jesus. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to basically start wrapping up the sermon in just a little bit, but I've got 2 challenges that I want to really end, and you can probably guess where I'm going because I've had 2 points the whole way, and I've reiterated them at least 4 times now. But there's 2 challenges, and that's, do you need to define the relationship? And I just want to say very simply that some of us need to define the relationship even though we've been a Christian for a really long time. You've been following God, but are you following God the way he wants you to follow him? Have you been following God as a good teacher, as good advice, or have you been following God as the Messiah, the one who's going to change the entire stinking world, right? Like the one who holds the world in his hands. Are you following God like he is worthy of us doing exactly what Peter did and abandoning everything else and running after him? Or are we following God in a lighthearted manner? See, here's what Jesus says right after this. In verse 21, literally right after he said everything else, here's the very next verse he says. He warns his disciples, don't tell anybody about who I am. The Son of Man is going to suffer terrible things. I mean, that's exciting. Like, you just decided to follow him, and now he says it's going to suck. That's kind of what he says. But he says, you're going to suffer. You'll be rejected. He's going to be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, the teachers. He's going to be killed and raised from the dead. This is super exciting, guys. I know. But then he goes on, and he turns from the followers, and he says, don't tell anybody I'm going to die. And then he looks at the crowd, and here's what he says to the crowd that he just had spoken to. He just had done this miracle with. He said, if any of you wants to keep following me, you must give up your own way. Then again, I just gave you 5,000 fish. I just gave you a ton of stuff. I gave you all of this. It's been good, guys. But now here's what you got to do is you got to give up your way. You got to take up your cross and daily follow me. Because if you try to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. If you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And then he says, but think about it for just a second. Think about it. Is your life really that good? I mean, that's kind of what he's saying. It's like, I mean, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it to gain the world that you think you're going to gain when ultimately you will die and lose it all? And wouldn't it be better to follow me and find peace that will be eternal? Find hope that will last beyond anything else? Wouldn't it be better to come to me and find the life that you actually need? Yes, it means you have to sacrifice. Yes, it means you have to give something up. Yes, it means you have to do this. But guys, he's the Messiah. That's the point. He's the one that Israel had been waiting for centuries to say, this is going to change everything. And some of them were let down and disheartened because it didn't go the way they wanted. Jesus didn't end up conquering Rome. He didn't do all this. But he did become the Lord of the world. I heard somebody say recently, and I love this, he said, see, everybody thought that Caesar was the king. They literally, on their coins, it says Caesar is Lord, right? That is who they worshiped on a Roman coin. It said Caesar is Lord. They worshiped him. Caesar was the end-all, be-all of everything in that empire, right? And they would have looked at Jesus and said, what is the point of following you? Shouldn't it be better to follow Rome or do that? They have the power. They wanted Jesus to conquer Rome, assume the power that Rome had. But Jesus looked at them and said, no, that's not the way. That's not the point. But think about this right now. When you think about Caesar, most of us, what do you think about? Salad. Right? When you think about Caesar, you don't think about power, you think about dressing on a salad, and maybe some pepper and some parm on there will be good. This is what Caesar reminds me of. What do I think of when I think of Jesus? Well, he's been the most influential person in the history of the world. He was the Messiah. He did change the world. He did do all of this. And some of us were scared to trust Jesus with our life. We're scared to trust Jesus with that thing that we're holding on to. I'll give you my heart, I'll give you my life, but I want to hold on to this. My pride, my selfishness. Maybe it's Banjo-Kazooie. Maybe that's what it is. Like your video games, right? Like your hobby that you know you should get rid of. Maybe it's this. But when you have this define the relationship moment, God is saying, I need you to come to me with everything. Everything. And when you come to me with everything, I will give you a life you couldn't imagine. And it will look different, but it'll be a life you couldn't imagine. Now, some of us, where we need to be as honest, we just need to start a relationship. There may be somebody in here today that you know what, I've never actually had that relationship with Jesus. And if that's you, it's so simple to start a relationship. Basically, all you have to do is say, let's go. I mean, that's it. You say, Jesus, I'm in. I want to follow you. You say, Jesus, I know I've screwed up. I know I'm broken. I know that I've done some stupid things in my life, but God, I know that you can forgive me. And when we trust that Jesus died to take the punishment of our sin, it changes everything for us. Worship team, you can go ahead and come forward now. And actually, if I can get Janae, if you can help, I'm not sure who's... Janae and Dennis, if you can hand out communion, that would be helpful. What we're going to do, we haven't taken communion yet as a church since we're only 1 month in. So we're going to take communion today because I realized we haven't taken communion yet. We should do that. But also I really think it fits with this. As we take communion today, here's what we're going to do. So I want us to define the relationship. I want us to ask the question of who is Jesus to me right now? Who is Jesus for me right now? Some of us, maybe there's something in our hearts that we need to give to Jesus. Honestly, maybe it's hurt, maybe it's loss, maybe it's pain, maybe it's sin, maybe it's anger, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's grief, maybe it's shame, maybe it's guilt. I could go on forever. I don't know what it is. But as we take this communion, and we'll take it together, so take this and figure out how to take the things apart. You can do that, but we'll take them all together here in a bit, and I'll tell you when and where to do it. But what I'm going to challenge us to do is just think through this first. Like, who is Jesus to me right now, in this moment? Who is Jesus to me? How do I see him? How do I interpret my relationship with him? And I want to be clear also, since we are taking communion, there are many churches that think differently about communion and what it means and all that. I don't believe that that's real blood. I don't believe it's real bread. I believe it's juice and a wafer, because that's what it is. But I believe it is symbolic of something way deeper than that. I believe that it is symbolic of what we're doing exactly what Jesus told us to do. See, in his last conversation with his disciples, he sat down with them and he said, guys, I'm going to die. It's going to be bad. It's going to be hurt. It's going to be difficult. But there's hope on the horizon. And he said, I'm dying for you. Because if we go back to the prophets, if we go back to what Isaiah said, he didn't just say that Jesus would be all this. The one thing that Peter didn't even realize at this time was that Isaiah had also said that he would be a suffering servant. That he would die, and it was by his wounds that we would be healed, that it was like his iniquity would save us, right? This is what he says. His blood would heal us when we're hurting physically, emotionally, in pain, when we have challenges, when we have these difficulties. So when we take this, we are taking this saying, Jesus, I believe you are my Messiah. Jesus, I believe you can set me free. Jesus, I believe you can heal me. Jesus, I believe you can change my addictions. Jesus, I believe you can break me free from the guilt and the shame and the loss and whatever it is. This is what he said. Luke 22:19. He took some bread and he gave thanks to God for it. He broke it in pieces. And I love that illustration. Every time I take communion, I take the bread and I break it because it reminds me of how broken I am. And it reminds me of every time that I've screwed up. And sometimes breaking it once isn't enough, so I'm like breaking it. I got like crumbs by the time I'm taking it because I am so broken, right? And he takes the bread and he breaks it and he says, this is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. If you guys are ready, you can go ahead and take the bread now. After supper, he finished the supper, and then he takes this cup of wine that's sitting in front of him, and he says, this juice, this wine, this cup, this thing that's in front of me is representative of my blood. It's the cup of the new covenant between God and his people. And what this new covenant meant was the ways of the past were gone. The shame of the past was gone. The wrath, the guilt, the I will pour down condemnation upon you is gone. And what he's saying is, no, I took the guilt, I took the wrath, I took the condemnation, and now you are set free because of my blood that was shed for you. And so what he says is, this is the new covenant. This is what it means now. This is what it is for you. And so he says, this cup is the new covenant between God and his people, and it's agreement confirmed with his blood, with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice to you. If you guys want to take that cup and just, let's take it together. Now, as the worship team leads us in a song, every week I challenge you with the next step, and I ask the question, what is your next step? You can take the next steps card, you can take the Cultivate card, you can write out your next step, you can rip it off, take it home so that you can remember what you need to do with this message. Or if you want us to pray for you, you can write it out and we'll pray for you. Or if you have a prayer request, you can write it out and put it in the offering that we'll collect after singing this song. What is God trying to say to you? That's the question.